Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our co-hosts, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage with consumers online, in-store, and everywhere in between. And now, here are Sri and Peter. Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of the CPG Guys podcast. I'm your co-host, Peter V.S. Bond. I'm also the Vice President of Retail Strategy at Power Reviews, a product rating and review software company. It's a special episode because not only will we be heard on the CPG Guys podcast, it will also be available on IRI's Growth Insight podcast. We're extremely pleased to join the audience that IRI has cultivated. We'll have more on this in a few minutes. As always, I'm joined by my co-host. He's an e-commerce veteran of notable CPGs like PepsiCo, J&J, and Revlon. He's also an accomplished entrepreneur. I'm sure he has something to say about that. So please join me in welcoming my friend, my co-host, Sri. Sri, how you doing today?
Doing awesome, Peter, and welcome to you as well. Michael, a warm welcome to you, and you are an extra special guest because what you may not know is I am an IRI alumni as well. And in fact, Peter and I met at IRI close to, is it safe to say, about 20 plus years ago at this stage?
I think it's safe to say that.
And we've been friends ever since then. So any work we do with IRI is extra special. I'm talking the days of Jim Follett, etc., like way back in the past, Jen Fulgoni, things of that nature, when the company was private, then became public and back and forth. So I'm hoping to have a great conversation when I'm not doing this. I've also helped launch ZenFuel, 100% natural supplements brand to help aid your sleep, energy, better movement, stress and anxiety relief, and male wellness. Do check it out at www.zenfuel.com or search ZenFuel on Amazon. That's ZenFuel. ZenFuel, where your happiness is our ambition.
Thank you, Sri. Before we get to our guest, I want to remind our audience that you can find all of our content, our podcast on 15 plus platforms, YouTube channel that includes playlists of our profit series, our retail series, and our women leadership series, so much more. Just go to cpgguys.com. And for our native audience, please make sure to subscribe to the IRI Growth Insight podcast. They have some terrific C-level guests, including my old boss from dunnhumby, Stuart Aiken, who's now Kroger's chief merchant, and Mark Klaus, CEO of Campbell Soup Company. 13 years ago, I worked on site for IRI at Campbell Soup in Camden, New Jersey. So it's a big IRI love fest today, and there's a reason for that. The reason we have today's episode playing on both the CPG Guys and the IRI Growth Insight podcast is because our guest is from IRI. Sri and I met each other over 20 years ago when we both worked for IRI. And if you listen to our podcast, you know that Sri's favorite topic is retail media. Our guest is the Executive Vice President of Technology and Retail Media Platforms for IRI. In a recent episode, we spoke with Stephen Carroll from Sam's Club. Sam's Club has partnered with IRI to offer brands retail media targeting that leverages the rich longitudinal transaction data coming from Sam's Club member purchases. We'll ask our guest to help us understand more about this and all the retail media offerings supported by IRI. Please join Sri and me in welcoming Michael Ellgass to the podcast. Mike, how are you today?
Hey, I'm good, Peter, for mentioning the IRI alum that we've got here because it's going to be a great conversation, right? You got three intellectually curious people that probably like to argue with one another. So it's going to be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
That's terrific, Mike.
I don't know the meaning of the word argue, so it won't be me. I'm the shy one on this podcast.
You see that he's arguing already, Peter. That's what I like to see.
He's just vocal. I know this is really about him champing at the bit to get to talk about his favorite topic and pick your brain. So let's just get right into it, shall we? I'm going to start with the first question for you, Mike. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about what your role is at IRI and what are the objectives of the technology and retail media platforms team?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would tell you I work on kind of the architecture of the tech solutions that we put in for retail marketing teams. We have a platform we call Liquid Data, and the way we use it with marketing is to help retailers better understand their customers. And we do that by applying, whatever 40 years or so, Sri, of IRI shopper analytics on top of a multi-year history of customer transactions. And then what's cool about the platform is you can go straight from that analysis to a target group, activate it from the platform, and then capture the exposure. And then you can measure, because you're the retailer and you can see all those omni-channel sales, what was the difference between people that were exposed to a campaign versus people that weren't. So the platform connects to kind of any addressable media that a retailer might have, whether that's relationship marketing or on-site, off-sites. We try to make it seamless across those customer touch points.
That word liquid data platform brings back memories. I remember, good over a decade and a half ago when we were trying to take the liquid data platform from Symphony Technologies and incubate drivers on demand for PepsiCo, and then the IPOP reporting system for PepsiCo. I knew this was going to be a fun episode because we are true hard-bred IRI alums who just love IRI, given the amazing training we got in the CPG industry by working with data from like ground up on day one in the industry.
Sri, I remember when I was at IRI, when they were launching it, I had to sign an extra NDA, and I couldn't even mention the name Liquid Data in the halls freely of IRI. It was so super secret when they launched it. And what a massive success that platform is.
So we're going to jump into arguably what we've already declared is my favorite topic, and it is, having led large P&Ls the last 8 years in e-commerce. Peter mentioned brands, whether it's for Revlon, Johnson & Johnson, Frito, PepsiCo, really doesn't matter. One of the areas that I've felt is a weakness for very large brands is this evolving notion of true retail media, aka on-site search, SEM search. That could be with the Amazon Media Group, could be with the Walmart Media Group. If you go back 2-3 years in history, it's kind of like a monopoly of the Amazon Media Group, and it's really Google. There's Criteo and external engines and things of that nature. And I feel to the T, brands still haven't understood the value of retail media, that it's truly the entire spectrum of the funnel and not just one portion of the funnel. And you can actually attribute end-to-end success on the dollars you choose to invest. So I'd love to hear your thinking around how this has evolved over the last decade, maybe the last 5 years since it's been prevalent. And here, what is table stakes in 2020 given, and Peter cringes when I use the word 2020 because he gave it a half-star review about a couple of days ago at our daily one question, one answer series on Instagram, which, by the way, users, you can check out. So if you can share with us your viewpoint, how's this evolving? Where is this going to go? What should brands do? That would be awesome.
Yeah, I would give 2020 a half star as well. And, I don't know, table stakes, I guess, to me is the purchase data, right? I mean, the reason omni-channel platforms are growing so fast is because for CPGs, purchase behavior is a great indicator of what people are going to go do. And so if you can get that data in a way that's leverageable so that you as a retailer can connect a brand to the people that it's going to be relevant to, you've done a great service. And so, making that accessible, leverageable, scalable for, your supplier partners, I think is the table stakes at this point. The next piece to me is it's got to be driven by closed loop, as you said. Incremental sales should be the true north. If you're a retailer, you can make that connection point. We don't have to rely on leading indicators anymore. We can actually have true performance-based marketing and see the people that saw your ad buy more or not. So table stakes is get it in real time so that you can optimize in campaign. And Steve from Sam's might have talked a little bit about the fact that they're on that journey right now of creating the flexibility within their media buying so that we can take that real-time buy signal and use it to change the mix of where we're delivering messages, what creating, what's the right of touch to get somebody to take action without wearing them out. And I'll tell you the future to me, and if Andrew Appel, our CEO, was here, he'd be elbowing me right now saying, lifetime value is where we want to. And as a retailer, you can do that because you can see purchasing indefinitely into the future. So you can take that same exposure that you think about as a campaign and say, did people continue to buy? Did I change people's hearts and minds here, or did I just get, a bump while I was advertising? And that should allow us over time to get much better at serving customers in a way that we're building, loyalty and building baskets, hopefully with the right brands in them if you're the advertiser.
Lifetime value, Andrew Appel, congratulations on being a true Salesforce.com alum where they focus heavily on lifetime value. One of the offshoots that came to mind while you were speaking, Michael, is I did want to ask, go forward, the media landscape is obviously metamorphosized completely. And if you look at it now, how does one, not in their marketing mix model, how does one skip retail media? To me, it's like you don't have a choice go forward. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think mix is still such a discussion. We've been doing work to try to unify campaign level management or measurement, rather, whether it's a lift model or whether it's a multi-touch attribution model back to mix. And I think the challenge with mix is it's great for allocation. It's probably not as granular, right, as what you need to see what's happening. And within retail, I think there's a lot of vehicles. Again, going back to that Sam's example, you can buy lockouts or you can buy, lapsed audiences, right? You can either get very focused or you can run a site. And so I think there's such a range of how you use retail media that I think for some people, it's that they may not have figured out the best way to use it, and therefore they're not maybe getting the results that they want yet. Do you think that could be part of it?
Sorry, Peter, but Peter knew the oxygen in this conversation was going to be sucked up by Sri. So why I asked you that question very particularly about the mix model is, I've stood in boardrooms and it's literally been, I kid you not, Michael, fist fights over who's going to pay for retail media. Is it above the line, aka trade rate, which is really the way it's classified and defined is really meant for consumer value activities. And then media is, of course, below the line and is not part of net trade sales. But today the industry is largely paying for it from net trade sales. The one they're penalizing, therefore, is the consumer because they're not able to add that value. It's coming out of true value they would offer via promotional discounts. So I've always felt if the industry can answer that question, who's going to pay? It belongs in the marketing mix, and marketers need to own retail media like their baby. Life will be good for everybody, and the winner would be the consumer. And any thoughts on that one?
I totally agree. And I think a lot of the issue is structural within, CPG. You tend to have different groups. And I think there's still a pretty strong sales hand on that shopper marketing decision. And, rightly so. There's obviously a value equation that includes space within the retailer. And, if you're on feature, not only are you getting a benefit, but you're blocking a competitor. So, it's a little complex, but your point of this is performance marketing. And if you're not using it that way, you're kind of missing, I think, an opportunity. And it should be a layered cake in my mind with your national game plan at the top and the retailers that have good programs stacked up underneath it. And if you do that well, then, you should be starting to think about that same audience, whether you're touching them with a brand message or touching them with, maybe something that's either co-branded or just closer to activation. When you get those things going in the right direction, I think everybody agrees that that's a winning formula. But organizationally, I think we struggle with who's got the budget and what's the planning window. And wait a minute, we do want to make sure we leverage this into these other conversations we're having with the retailer. So I think the good news is we're starting to at least get, third-party endorsements. It's like what IRI is able to do with a lift study to say, I'm going to use the same methodology here at the retailer that I do with our national. And therefore, if I'm the advertiser, I can look at results that have at least the same methodology behind them and start thinking about it as, a fair apples to apples, or at least maybe two varieties of apples or something, but, getting closer to something comparable.
We're really about education here. So
to be fair, you were forewarned.
I know. Let's break this down a little bit. Specifically, how is IRI helping brands target high-value audiences through retail media platforms? What are kind of like the building blocks of that?
Yeah, I think it's got to start with shopper analytics, right? And so in some of our platforms, we have connected those two things. So what you might have seen as a insights gateway in the past is now connected to the activation piece. And so, going back to the early days of liquid data, what's cool about the system is the different data sets are all in one platform. And so you can come out of a report, maybe you're looking at, the new customers you've had since COVID with the buyer. I can actually right click on that report and turn that column into an audience. And then that audience can move over to the retail marketing team to put a campaign together behind it. And so that's how we're really trying to make, insights actionable. And that's been hugely helpful, I would tell you. And then, again, because we're able to close the loop, what we're trying to do is get people to think about the next action coming out of, the first one, if you will, so that we're building and getting smarter each time that we execute something. And that of starting maybe with a better, creative brief, if you will, because we've got a good business case identified, but then being able to link it seamlessly to the activation we're going to take. That's where I think we're uniquely able to add value with this platform. It's pretty cool.
So this one's an easy one, Michael, but one that I think is very needed in the industry. And that is, the journey to insights, analytics, and performance management in the offline world largely started and ended with one of two vendors in the industry, and you're representing one of them, which is IRI. And I've always believed very strongly, especially my 8 years in e-com, that if retailers and consumers are going to get a fair shot from brands at truly getting what they deserve, which is value, the right assortment, search, things of that nature, if folks like y'all or your competitor doesn't step up and own the end-to-end of data analysis and report out from a performance management perspective, which leads to insights and analytics, the spectrum of e-commerce, aka digital selling, including digital browsing, then the industry is forever a little plagued by this aura of it's incomplete. So I'd love to know if you can share with the audience what's IRI's outlook towards using technology or other platforms to kind of get into this space and then enable, as a result, retail media for brands.
Yeah, I would tell you, going back to Andrew and the team that leads IRI, the goal has been to get to one collaboration platform that connects a retailer, an advertiser, and media, right? And so, a lot of what we talked about before on the layered cake, the media opportunity isn't getting to be as layered a cake as it could be. But if you look at our clients that are on liquid data as an advertiser, they're utilizing some of the same reports, technology, data science that we put in place at a retailer. And today that connection is largely people logging into two different systems and then having a conversation. But we're starting to get challenged by our larger CPG clients to connect these things so that you could go seamlessly from their version of the platform to a retailer's version. And we think that's very doable from a technology standpoint. It's another one that takes some behavioral change and organizational change. But if we can get that foundation in place, when you think about then the publishing world, and particularly some of the more innovative DSPs, think about like the Trade Desk and DV360, vision where that whole ecosystem could be attached and that people's, privacy and IP could be protected because we've got a system that can protect at a cell level what is being exchanged. So I think, I don't know if I'm talking, too far out into the future with that one, Sri, but I really believe that that's where it goes over time, because if you're going to serve customers well, you got to be relevant. If you're going to be taking money from advertisers, you got to deliver results. And that starts to come together when it all lives in a platform that communicates.
That's great, Mike. My question relates to where the industry is and its capabilities around retail media. Is today's retail media still primarily from a personalization standpoint driven or communication standpoint driven by email? Is it personalization results from search and keyword terms? And are we getting to the point where once a shopper opens up their app or visits a site, the personalization begins before they've even done anything other than just open up that capability, because the retailer knows who that consumer is and is already ready with what the experience is going to be like.
Yeah, I think it's all those things. I'd tell you, email continues to be the foundation, I think, for most of our retailers. And, it's interesting. Email's not maybe the sexiest thing, but it's had a bit of a renaissance during COVID, and people paying a little bit more attention.
It works.
eMarketer would tell you that the open rates are up and such. But so I think that foundation where, to me, relationship marketing, there's an expectation that you know who I am and that you're being relevant. Hopefully there's some sort of personalization going on, at least at a segmentation level, if not a one-to-one. Search to me is a really interesting opportunity, because if you look at, Amazon in particular with their multi-billion-dollar media business, a big chunk of that is paid search, right? And the consumer seems to be pretty open to that experience of getting paid results back from searches. I've done searches for certain items on Amazon where the entire screen was, paid advertising essentially that came back at me. And, if it's relevant, thank you, I guess, because, I'm just trying to find the right thing. So I think for some of our grocery retailers, they don't have the site traffic that, general merchandise omnichannel retailer does. And so they may not have that search or even a keyword mentality yet. But I think that is going to be a product that will provide a lot of growth, particularly for grocery retailers as pickup grows. And then I think the opportunity, Peter, is exactly what you described of, for ads serving the right thing to me, because when you open up the app or when you go on to the retailer's website, for sure, there's no reason we can't ad serve something relevant based on all we know about you and what's in your basket. And, our system certainly supports that, whether it's, a batched request that we're providing data back or a real-time hit. We can certainly help the retailer with the right relevance, whether it's based on historic or whether it's, predictive. And I think that's, kind of the next level for some of my clients, where they have ads in their app, but it's not, ad serve. So it's not necessarily one-to-one personalization. But, going back again to Steve and the Sam's Club, I don't know if he talked about this, but, the Sam's and Walmart apps has a mode when you're in the store, right, versus when you're not. So, talk about hyper relevance. Like we can deliver an ad with Sam's that I know, Shri is standing in the store, and I know that, he's either searched for something or I'm, predicting it based on what we've seen previously. And so hyper relevant and, certainly much lower in the funnel at that point if I'm talking to you when you're in the store. So actually the same tool, I guess, could be, upper funnel when you're in the app at home and potentially lower funnel when you're in the store with it. It's an amazing opportunity.
Speaking of that very opportunity that you mentioned, this world of retail media and digital, while the KPIs for success in retail media are actually derived from offline, it gets so complicated and confusing. Words such as CPM, impressions, conversion, CTR, CCVR. I mean, this list is endless. Then you look at Amazon, it's like glance views. And then you look at someone else, the platform is radically different because the ROAS on one retailer, which is super regional versus a national retailer like Walmart, is never going to be the same because the eyeballs don't exist. And then that forces the dollars to go below the line versus above the line and vice versa. But if I asked you to pick one or two KPIs as what you think are the most relevant for the future in this retail media led world, what would you pick? Because it's just such a plethora. Like at the end of the day, in the offline world, if we had to pick, we'd say net sales and profit.
Right. I think incremental sales is where it's going. And, we have products outside of retail to measure, linear TV. We're using location to try to understand the return on a billboard or an event. I mean, there's no reason in today's connected world that you can't start to get to at least an approximation of what the incremental sales is. So I think it needs to go there. And, candidly, I think because the media industry was built without, what a brick and mortar or omnichannel retailer has as a sales signal, we've gotten very dependent on systems that feed off of, click-throughs and all the other, leading indicators that you mentioned. And it's hard, I think, sometimes to push those systems aside and say, that we don't have to do it that way any longer. But certainly performance marketing is what the way I think of retail. And I think, as we talked about earlier, that should start to ladder up to lifetime value, because I should be not only thinking about what the incremental sales were from the campaign, but I should be looking at whether, buying stayed at a higher level post-campaign, whether new buyers continued to buy. Now you start to change the equation dramatically, because you're opening the window right to a much longer period of time to say, is my ad having an impact or not? And that's ultimately what you're trying to do with brand advertising, right? You're trying to lay the groundwork for ongoing and continuous buying. And so, even if it's upper funnel, I would argue upper funnel is just, future projection of what you're going to buy is what you're trying to measure. It's got to go back to incremental sales.
So, Michael, if I came back to that very statement and we said performance marketing, right? When you started answering this question, obviously the name of the game is to optimize your performance marketing and drive the number by improving your ROAS, etc. I would love your viewpoint on what about growth marketing, which I primarily see as SEO-based content, which is the world Peter is in.
What we're seeing in like grocery in particular, when somebody searches for something and makes a decision and it gets on a shopping list, it's going to be there by default, right? Until you create enough friction to make me want to change. And so as you think about like the extreme of I'm talking to Alexa or Google Home and it is ordering, paper towels because I said paper towels and it's already, hard coded what that paper towel is. I think search and what people do, with their own properties to try to help you manage your shopping list is going to be, just critical to win for the CPG, because again, it's going to be hard to change. I have a certain level of engagement with certain products and it's lower with others. And so once I've made a choice, like getting me to rethink whether I'm using the right, fill in the blank, low engagement item, it's going to be really difficult.
What I was really trying to get, Michael, is, the world of performance marketing, the numbers are absolute numbers and they can be optimized. Mm-hmm. But to win in this space in retail media, that alone requires the support of growth marketing, which is making sure that every campaign you run has the best ad from an SEO standpoint. Traditionally brands write their copy based on the story they want to tell. That doesn't make it SEO, because the story that must be told has to wear the lens of the consumer, which is like radically different from how most brand leaders are trained and CMOs are trained. So I just wonder, even if you're putting money and investing into these amazing performance marketing campaigns, but you're not focused on the growth marketing aspect, will it really yield the optimization that you're looking for?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. I mean, there's a part of me that's kind of old school and will tell you, a relevant ad without a perfect story can still be pretty impactful if it's delivered in the right place at the right time, the right person. But that having been said, I think one of the, challenges I saw in my old life and in this one is, the creative needs of these channels has not kept up with the technology, right? Having the right versioning, having the right choices, I guess, so that I can match what I know about the person and, the need state to copy that or creative that delivers against that and is engaging. I mean, that to me is next level stuff that I think is under resourced today. You see a couple industries that do it really well. I think of like auto, for instance, where they can version video for different markets where you've got different, incentives and you've got different creative because the car is on the beach in Florida and the mountains in Denver or whatever. It's like there are models of how to do this, I think, and get your story across the the different channels. And I think that's a huge opportunity to improve performance, no question.
Well, I agree with you, Mike. And I think about the vast data resources that IRI has at its disposal. Obviously, the longitudinal loyalty data with point of sale included. And then I think about ecosystem data like health and wellness lifestyle attributes that allow you to create customer segments of people who are living a gluten-free lifestyle or a non-GMO lifestyle. And all of a sudden now you can build personalization strategies for a consumer the minute they hit the app or the site. So tremendously powerful tools. And I would also add, I agree with you on the incrementality of being the core measure for KPI in addition to lifetime value. When I was leading brand and category personalization for a big national retailer, I didn't execute any type of personalized email, direct mail, register coupon or mobile app campaign if I couldn't measure the net product lift and the net margin impact. That to me is table stakes. If you're putting stuff out and not measuring it, you shouldn't be doing it. So what I want to get to is something that Shri mentioned earlier, which is about where IRI is in terms of supporting the industry. Particularly, I'd love to hear from you why you think retailers are partnering with IRI to enable all of these capabilities. What are kind of like some of the under the hood or behind the scenes technologies that you and your team are bringing to the equation here?
Yeah, I think it's really driven by the need to collaborate. If you think about a lot of the MarTech stack, it was built for marketers, and in some cases, it was built for groups within marketing. Right, the email team would prefer not to be bothered by the social or digital team, and I don't have that luxury in retail for the most part. It's the collaboration with merchants and key suppliers that is driving the agenda. And then that needs to dovetail with what the marketing team knows is right for customers, in a broader focus of the retail brand. And the ability of liquid data to put everybody in one platform and allow that collaboration to happen in a secure, privacy safe way is just something that other companies haven't, even designed against, because that wasn't the brief. If I'm just a CRM system by itself. So I think that's really one of the keys, is that ability to let the organization into the marketing process and allowing that collaboration to take place. And then, as we talked about, because we're having the same learnings at the same time, because it's based on incremental sales and not maybe a brand score or something that feels, fluffy to the rest of the organization. You've got people saying, yeah, we're building loyalty, we're building share of wallet. We can see the results in the system. These marketing metrics are matching what I'm seeing in my merchant dashboards. That's really the secret sauce, I would say, behind the liquid data platform.
So speaking about the liquid data platform, earlier I mentioned, the journey to success in performance management started with one or two vendors, of which IRI is one. If you're looking at online shopping, offline shopping, and everything in between, which really makes it omni-channel shopping, how is IRI putting together solutions today to enable brands and retailers to be able to measure everything across the omni-channel spectrum of how a household or a shopper is engaging and buying brands?
Yeah, so we ingest it all, Shri. Like, we don't necessarily care in the system that it transacted at a particular store or on .com. Most of our clients want to look at what happened with pickup, which most are putting in the .com bucket, but it is a little different customer behavior. So if you look at most of our standard reports, including our lift measurement campaign reports, we provide a toggle so you can see omni-channel, or you can see just what we would consider e-commerce, or just what they might consider brick and mortar. And obviously the retailer is trying to grow all of it, but a lot of our advertisers have groups that are focused on e-commerce, and so they want that breakout, and they want to understand what the interaction is. Right? Is this person that's, hitting e-commerce coming from some other pure play e-commerce? Or are they transitioning from behavior that used to be in store? And within the context of a retailer at a time, the retailer can tell them, what those shifts are looking like, and obviously what else is in the baskets, and, how to think about the combination of trips. And so, I just find that fascinating, because in my own life, there are things now that are having delivered, things that I can plan ahead enough to pick up, but I'm still finding myself running into the club or running into the store for things. And it's an interesting mix to try to figure out how to influence all those different trips, because the retailer, of course, would like to win as many of those as they can, and the brand wants to be wherever that customer is going to purchase. So, figuring out that shopper journey is part of what's possible for a retailer, because they can see all the channels if they bring them into one platform.
Michael, is it safe to assume for our audience here that, as you're giving us a peek under the tent here, somewhere in the near future, that from a reporting standpoint, at least a performance management standpoint, at least, that brands will truly be able to see the end-to-end of where their products are sold online, offline, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's challenges obviously in stitching it all together, because we have some folks that are not sharing data into that ecosystem. But if you think about store level, or what we call POS sales at IRI, everyone's kind of gotten comfortable with a set of rules where everybody provides their data, and different people get different views based on where they sit in that ecosystem. But people have gotten comfortable with that. I think increasingly, shopper data is getting to that point where people are more comfortable sharing, into a multi-pool, knowing that identities are protected, but that it helps us serve people better by being able to go from what would have been all in the past to, actual, loyalty behavior. And so, we're starting to be able to see it much better across omni-channel. We acquired a great POS and e-panel product that provide kind of that rest of market view for, wherever you sit in the ecosystem. It's rest of market if you're not in those channels. So it's a key piece still of what we do for retailers, to help them see, where they fit into that ecosystem. And, the e-commerce piece of it has never been more important in some categories in particular, right?
That's great, Mike. Yeah. The amount and magnitude of the data and how you can use it to do targeting is quite remarkable. I think about some work I did even 7 or 8 years ago, where we would leverage the actual location of the register in the store or outside of the store to be able to identify what type of a trip mission it was, and then merge that in with the customer data. So did they buy a product at the pharmacy counter? Did they buy it at the fuel station in the parking lot? All of a sudden, that with the transaction data and the product data becomes just so powerful. But we've been talking a lot about the retailer's own site, their own app, their own ability to communicate. Let's talk a little bit about leveraging this data offsite. So what offsite retail media and social media capabilities does IRI support through the use of this data to help brands target shoppers, not just when they're on the retailer's platform?
Yeah, so we help our clients make the same connections that we do nationally. And of course, we support audiences on most of the major DSPs and publisher platforms, the walled gardens, et cetera. And so, we utilize those relationships and the same technology to make the same connections where retailers want to. So, most of my clients are using one of the major DSPs to be able to reach their customers off-site and, broaden and speed how quickly they can find somebody with a message. We're starting to do more and more with the walled gardens, and them, I would say, becoming a little bit more comfortable that the retailer has a customer relationship that's important and one that we have to work collectively against. So, we're trying to make those seamless for the retailer ecosystem and have that kind of group of offsite be a part of their portfolio. But Verizon Media had a little summit this week, and they used the term community garden. And I don't know if they coined that. I've heard it a couple of times, but I'm going to give them credit this week. And I love that term because I think a retailer can be a community garden in that they obviously have their owned and operated, which is pretty exciting stuff. If you want to be next to that buy button, but then they also have their unique, things like their app. And I think because of what they know in real time about a customer, they can add real value to the messaging offsite, and that, for the partners offsite that are willing to close the loop, that's really what I'm personally looking for, because the way I've tried to architect these systems is to have exposure files come back daily so that we can look at it against sales daily. And that's what allows us to do optimization. So if I have a partner that's not comfortable with that speed of data transfer, doesn't mean they shouldn't be a valid, part of the ecosystem, but it does limit a little bit what the retailer can do with our technology. And so we really want the real-time data exchange for, relevance and better results.
This is a topic, obviously, we can go on for hours, including debunking historical myths on how retail media can and can't be effective. But 40 minutes has flown by. And here's our last question for this episode, and it's effectiveness. How and what is IRI's work headed towards to help brands actually unify their marketing effectiveness in this space?
Yeah, it's funny because we definitely fill a podcast with that one. We talked a little bit about the organizational challenges of connecting things for really understanding marketing effectiveness across the pieces. But I think it starts, if I could be self-serving for a second, with retailers having a third party doing measurement for them. It's not that we don't trust you, retailers, if I'm an advertiser, but we'd like a methodology that's been put together by data scientists and is calibrated across open web and other platforms, which is something you can't do if you're sitting within your own organization. And so I think unified measurement starts with having, a methodology that's transparent and defendable across where you run media. And if you get there, then you can start to have apples to apples comparison. And, I think we're working on other products besides Campaign Lift. We're working on multi-touch attribution. It used to be something that was just so expensive to do. We're starting to make it more affordable because of the, gains in processing power and that idea of assigning, fractional contribution and an understanding of ad stock based on when you saw something. Those, we know how to do that. We've got to continue to make it faster and more affordable, which is the journey we're on right now. And the thing that is interesting about MTA is that it starts to overlap more with marketing mix, right? Because you can start to do non-addressable with our MTA products. So unified measurement is where we're trying to get to, and someday I think mix and campaign level views will start to at least point in the same direction. Hopefully the coefficients will start to inform each other, and we'll start to really feel good about how they calibrate together, right? That macro to micro and back. But that I think is the right question to end on, because it is not answered, and it is a journey. We're working with ARF. We're working with many of the tech platforms, and our own data science group that's led by Vijoy, to try to solve that and make marketing effectiveness something that is fast enough and affordable enough that it can be the true north. And we've made some good progress, and hopefully you'll have me back in another few years, and we can talk about how we've solved it.
You are always welcome back on the show so we can geek out about CVRs and CTRs.
Right on.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to have any trouble twisting Shree's arm to get you back on. I want to remind our audience that all of our content links to our audio podcasts on over 15 platforms, our YouTube channel, the content from our profitability series, that you can find that at cpgguys.com. Also, if you have a virtual assistant, a Google or an Echo device, you can always ask it to play the CPG Guys. or for that matter, play IRI Growth Insights. So, Mike, thank you so much for this tremendous conversation. Shri and I loved geeking out. It is Shri's favorite topic. It secretly is mine too, because I come from a loyalty world where personalization drove so much engagement and all measurable. So I'm very excited to hear that's really where IRI is taking this. Can you let our audience, our brands and retailers understand where they can learn more about the retail media solutions that IRI provides?
Yeah, absolutely. So IRIworldwide.com is our home. Again, it's worldwide after IRI. And there's a whole section for media. There's actually a whole section too for COVID and indexing some of the things that are going on with demand across products and in stock. So some cool stuff there. Or look me up on LinkedIn or whatever. Always enjoy talking with folks about what they're hearing about in the industry.
Yeah, Mike, we'll include your LinkedIn profile in the notes of the podcast. So if anyone reads, like us, all of those notes, you'll be able to find directly. Thank you so much for this. And let me turn to Shri for a second. Shri, wow, I know you are just giddy as can be today. Thanks as always for joining me on this journey. It was a tremendous conversation.
Peter, thank you so much. This is always a pleasure doing these week over week, now episode over episode with you. Michael, thank you for engaging with us, most importantly, on every single question and bringing your valuable insights on not just on behalf of IRI, but also yourself. Sincerely, thank you, and we'll hope to have you back soon, perhaps after the holidays, to discuss how the retail media season went for holidays 2020.
Love it. Thanks, guys.
Great. We'd also, Shri and I'd like to thank IRI for the opportunity to join your Growth Insight podcast and to reach your audience and to your audience and our audience. Don't forget to leave us feedback. Shri and I read every bit of feedback that is published. So if you go to the Apple Podcast platform by visiting tinyurl.com/Apple CPG podcast, you can leave a rating and write a review. We look forward, as always, to everyone joining us on the next episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Goodbye. The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.